Hello friends, I hope that you are having a wonderful day today. In today's video, we are going to be refilming the story time for the Kill Bill jump. Due to audio issues, I had to refilm this. So we are going to be doing that here and now. We are going to dive straight into the story. However, as some initial reminder stuff, we are beginning in El Paso, Texas, which is where Beatrix Kiddo is located and where she has spent the 4 years, give or take, before the story actually begins, in a coma, recovering from gunshot wounds she sustained on the day of the rehearsal of her wedding. And this story does have various not safe for work elements. The story actually begins with an attempted thing of a with an attempted instance of something that if I say, YouTube will automatically make sure that even if this video ever gets monetized or is ever eligible to be monetized, that it wouldn't be. So just keep that in mind. That is certainly something that you should know before you go and watch the first film. There are also various violent elements in both Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2. These are action adventure revenge flicks, so that is definitely some context that is worth remembering. That said, we are going to be beginning our journey with Luciano the Jumper being teleported right into El Paso, Texas. Luciano, upon arriving, does not hesitate to take advantage of what meta knowledge they possess, and they immediately go ahead and head towards the El Paso hospital. When they arrive there, they ignore all of the people who attempt to communicate with them, all the while using telekinesis and various other superpowers to rid the area of assassins that are on the prowl looking for Luciano. Luciano is a specialist who is not a drop-in. They have a reputation as a very talented gunsmith, and there is a reputation and not there's on a reputation there is a bounty out on their head among criminals in the underworld who are very eager to take advantage of that and as a way to catapult themselves to fame. However, Luciano is not here for them. Luciano instantly uses telekinesis to dispatch whatever ones of them they come across while they're on their way to the actual area where they are needed. They're following both meta knowledge and also a very powerful perk that they possess that alerts them to when people are in danger or in need of help. In this particular case, this perk has grown so powerful due to having had it for multiple jumps now that they're able to use it even on dangers that people themselves are not consciously aware of. So Luciano is very eager to take advantage of this, and along the way they are dispatching criminals. When they manage to reach the unconscious form of Beatrix Kiddo, they are able to find themselves right next to someone who intends to do something very unholy to Beatrix, and they do not allow that to happen. Luciano uses telekinesis to instantly dispatch the person who is going to do something R-rated to Beatrix, and allows their own healing powers to wash over Beatrix and speed up her recovery. Not only does this allow our heroine to recover her energy faster, it also allows her to wake up and not be in a state of disarray or distress when they come across Luciano. Luciano, all the while, has been ignoring various different attempts from drawbacks to force themselves onto Luciano in very annoying ways, such as a drawback which makes it so that different things are angled on people's feet. This is not something that actually bothers Luciano all that much, but it is annoying. They're able to ignore the attempted distraction by the universe, and when Beatrix wakes up, Luciano introduces themselves, says that they are a friend, and offers to go and help Beatrix on her journey. They inform Beatrix that the other members of the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad are alive, and that it is time for them to go on a journey together, first to Vernita Green's house, so that way they can go ahead and get rid of the first of the Deadly Viper assassination members, and then they're going to go after the rest of the crew. Beatrix takes a little bit of time to get used to the idea of this, but eventually she is convinced that Luciano is a helpful ally. Luciano is able to talk at great length about some of the assassinations that Beatrix has been on, and Luciano is also able to point out that they are a skilled gunmaker and they know how to use different weapons very talentedly. So Beatrix is persuaded of Luciano's abilities, especially when they are leaving the hospital, more assassins attempt to attack and are momentarily disabled by the effects of the inverse ninja law, and then are promptly dispatched by the two of them working together. This little bit of experience of teamwork helps Beatrix build up some confidence in Luciano's abilities, and those initial impressions are further strengthened when they leave the hospital and they find Luciano's mobile home stationed not far outside of it. The two of them go over from El Paso and begin a long journey over to the home of Vernita Green, who is the first of the seven deadly, not of the seven deadly, but of the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad members to fall at the hands of Beatrix in the original canon, and will be the first member to fall in this version of the story as well. Two heroes are not on a particularly time-sensitive quest, at least not at this early stage of their adventure. So the Luciano ends up taking a somewhat scenic route between El Paso and the home of Vernita Green. During this time, Luciano will take advantage of downtime periods to teach Beatrix both different martial arts things, a handful of their own supernatural abilities, and also to convert her into a werewolf. All of this is designed to give her an edge, because Luciano would like for her to be the central protagonist during most of the most pivotal action scenes. Luciano is there primarily to provide a supporting hand, and also to make sure that Beatrix can get to her quarry as uninjured as possible and in as fresh a state as possible. Luciano wants to enjoy fighting on the sidelines and wants to enjoy being a support character, so while they are more than helpful, they are not going to be taking the limelight off of Beatrix. By the time they reach the home of Vernita Green, Luciano has had all the time in the world to begin to teach Beatrix new skills, new abilities, and also to help her train with new equipment, including a pair of handguns that Luciano made for her. When the confrontation with Vernita Green begins, Luciano is clever and recalls a pivotal detail and little side event that happens during the story. They recall that Vernita Green's daughter appears partway through the fight and is someone who actually sees her mother fall and die at the hands of Beatrix. Luciano uses their telekinesis and a handful of other abilities to divert the bus that is going to be dropping off Vernita's daughter during the confrontation between Vernita and Beatrix. And by the time Beatrix is able to successfully defeat Vernita, the bus is still far from Vernita's home. So even though Vernita's daughter will come across her mother's body and will be the person who ends up reporting the body to police officers, Luciano is nearby and subtly uses various powers of theirs to make sure that this event is both not as traumatizing as it could be, and also does not result in Beatrix and Beatrix's daughter later on being in the crosshairs of someone who very likely will grow up to be a major danger and a major threat, at least in the canon that we are going with for this story's sake, because there actually is no indicator during the original story that Vernita's daughter will grow up to be anyone dangerous. But I like to imagine that there's consequences to actions like this in a story, so I decided to go ahead and give this a little bit of a happier ending. Luciano during this time gives a handful of people a version of one of their perks, very specifically one of the ultimate good boy perks from Chronicle, which makes it so that you can comfort someone and that you can be of help to someone and they can overcome their problems, particularly a handful of people that they suspect will be close to Vernita's daughter, so that way this particular part of the story has a happier ending than it otherwise would. After this, Luciano and Beatrix turn their sights international. It is time for them to go after Oren Ishii, who is the head of a group of Yakuza and various other criminals in Japan, as well as to go and pay a visit to someone from Beatrix's past, Hattori Hanzo. The two of them travel to Japan, with Luciano paying for it out of their own pocket, primarily out of niceness, but also so that way they can go on more adventures. And all the while, they are occasionally fending off assassination attempts. And when they eventually reach the home of Hattori Hanzo, the two of them are quick to remake Hattori's acquaintance, because Hattori has actually encountered both of them, as well as another pivotal character in the story, Bill, in the past. It takes a little bit of persuading for Hattori Hanzo and for Luciano to agree to make new weapons for Beatrix, but during the confrontation that Beatrix had with Vernita, she realized that she needs new equipment. Everything, even Luciano's own handguns, which are the very first weapons Luciano has ever made by hand, especially the first modern weapons that Luciano has ever made by hand, need to be up to par if they're going to be used against the remaining members of the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad. Luciano helps Hattori, and Hattori helps Luciano, and eventually the two of them construct a pair of powerful weapons: a very stylish pistol and also an excellent blade for Beatrix to be using on the rest of their enemies. Luciano is thankful to Hattori and wonders if there could be a possibility of them collaborating in the future. However, Hattori is quick to inform Luciano that they have retired, and Luciano, remembering that this is one of the central characters behind their origin in this particular jump, decides to respect that, and swears that they will come and visit Hattori in the future solely as friends, and to have and to swap war stories, as it were. And Luciano and Beatrix are swiftly on their way to confront Oren Ishii. They go over to the House of Blue Leaves, and Luciano is quick to notice that there are multiple people who are well armed and ready for battle over by the prolific restaurant and bar. By prolific, I meant famous, but the well-known restaurant and bar. And Luciano realizes that over the course of their adventures, someone must have tipped off Bill, and that this is one of the ways that the challenges of the supplement of the scenario that Luciano is taking on is manifesting. There are all sorts of enemies, from various named assassins who are not actually named in the story, but have original names and are famous in this version, to minions of Oren Ishii, such as the Crazy 88. Luciano looks over Beatrix, and the two of them come up with a plan. Luciano will distract and will take on the large crowd of enemies, having already demonstrated at this point various supernatural facets of their abilities, and Beatrix having quietly accepted this because Luciano is at this point a trusted ally and friend, and Beatrix going off to confront Oren by herself. Luciano accepts this, having in fact planned for it, and is very eager to get up to it, and assaults the House of Blue Leaves using a combination of telekinesis and various powerful guns that they have on their person. They are quick to engage in carnage, and Oren is encouraged to leave, but Oren decides that she wants to be alone to confront Luciano. However, Luciano and Beatrix are already telepathically connected, and Luciano realizes that this is Oren's plan and swiftly instructs Beatrix where to go to have her confrontation with Oren, and the two of them begin a dramatic cinematic battle. By the time it is done, Beatrix has been forced to take on her werewolf form and to take advantage of her werewolf abilities in order to bring down the Queen Bee herself. However, when it's done, we have completely finished the events of Kill Bill Volume 1, which is very exciting. The House of Blue Leaves has been destroyed. Luciano will be using the Right of Conquest to take it over in the future. However, that is definitely a thing for in the post-scenario section of the story. So when this is over, Luciano and Beatrix get ready to leave and get ready to head over to the United States to confront L. Driver, Bud, and a handful of other characters, as well as to begin to inch towards the climax of the story, a confrontation with the deadly assassin, Bill. Somewhere out in the wilderness lives one of the members of the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad named Bud. Bud is Bill's brother and is himself a very dangerous assassin who specializes in ambush in ambushes and wields a powerful weapon, a deadly shotgun. However, none of this is able to prepare Bud for the fact that Luciano and Beatrix are well aware of Bud's tactics and are ready for them. When the two of them arrive in the wilderness and locate Bud, they are able to catch the man completely off guard, even with the assassins that he has backing him up, as a way to increase the deadliness of this encounter. Because of this, when Bud attempts to use his shotgun on Beatrix, which in the original canon results in Beatrix being more or less knocked out and having to endure the indignities of being buried alive, that simply does not happen. Luciano assaults and defeats the assassins who have come here for Luciano's head generally, but also to split some of the money that Bud would definitely make if he is able to kill Beatrix with him. However, when all of that fails to happen, Bud lies defeated, having been taken out fairly easily by the group of adventurers who have come here to take him out. And Luciano and Beatrix are more or less unharmed. In the wake of this, the two of them are able to contact El Driver and trick her into coming over to the place. However, she is a deadly assassin herself. She is, in fact, probably the most deadly of the deadly assassins other than Bill. So even though she is ambushed, she is still able to hold her own for several minutes. An impressive feat. However, this is mostly because Luciano is not particularly interested in using their superpowers on her. So because of that, they are able to fight her for several minutes before eventually bringing her down and reducing all of the members of the Deadly Viper assassination squad to ashes and dust, with the sole exceptions being Beatrix and Bill. Now that there are only two people left, Luciano and Beatrix have the difficult task of going and finding Bill. In order to do that, the two of them, powered mostly by Luciano's meta-knowledge, go ahead and go over to Mexico and come across a pimp. This pimp is able to be persuaded after a couple of little misadventures, including just doing some little errand work for him, to share the location of Bill. More or less, he gives them a general ballpark area that they could go to and search. And it is while they are doing this that they realize that Bill still has BB in this version of the story. Enough changes have happened that Luciano was not sure if BB, Beatrix's daughter, would actually still be with Bill during the final confrontation, but both of them are a little dismayed to realize that she is. It's a very unfortunate facet of this. However, the two of them have come this far. They are steel. They are steel in their resolves to go ahead and finish the story. And the two of them decide to simply openly approach Bill's home. During this time, they are assaulted by one more group of assassins. However, obviously, to a character as powerful as Luciano, these sorts of things are just not really enough for them to be worth anything. However, it is worth noting that this is the first time that the assassins have attempted to use silver. It does seem very interesting to note that this particular group of assassins does not have anyone with any actual powers, but they are clever enough to know that silver works on werewolves, and they have seen footage of the carnage that was left over in the wake of the House of Blue Leaves when it was defeated by Luciano and Beatrix. They saw Beatrix shift. They know that she is something inhuman, and they are trying everything to see what works. Beatrix is annoyed to discover that silver works a little more than most things would on someone as tough as a werewolf. However, Luciano's type of werewolf, especially post-generic werewolf jump, is not especially vulnerable to silver. So because of that, even though silver stings a little more than it probably should, it's mostly an inconvenience, which is something that the assassins are dismayed to discover. Luciano and Beatrix, a little bit bloody, arrive at Bill's hacienda, his gorgeous estate somewhere in Mexico, presumably. I actually don't remember enough of the canon to know if that was like a specifically stated canon fact, that it's located specifically in Mexico, so I'm just assuming that it was. And when they do, Bill is delighted to greet them. He welcomes them as friends, and he encourages them to come and have dinner with him and his daughter, as well as some of his friends. Unsurprisingly, his friends are another final custom group of assassins. This time it is Bill's second backup squad. Bill, in this version of the story, has not been idle. He has, in fact, still been working and has trained a new group of Deadly Viper assassins after most of the Deadly Vipers stopped being assassins specifically and started venturing out into other sorts of organized crime, or even left the life of crime kind of entirely. So during this time, Luciano and Beatrix and Bill and the squad, as well as BB, have a nice dinner. All of them talk. They're very pleasant and polite. It is a nice, if awkward, dinner, and it's a nice little moment to cap off this story. What happens next follows more or less as canon. Bill leads BB over to bed. The two of them have a nice little bedtime story, and BB is put to sleep, and the final confrontation begins in full. Luciano persuades the assassins to let Bill and Beatrix have one final moment of kindness and one final conversation, and have a moment of privacy. So Luciano goes out back to the backyard of the hacienda and does battle with the group of assassins. Each one of them is a specialist in a specific form of combat. There is someone who is effectively a Filipino equivalent of Oren Ishii, who uses of various forms of Filipino martial arts, and specifically stick fighting, as well as different weapons from the Philippines. That person is unsurprisingly the first person to fall because Luciano has the most fun fighting them. There is two different ambush predators, and then there's someone who specializes in poison, and none of this works against Luciano because Luciano is able to use telekinesis to deflect any ranged attacks and is able to dispatch them one by one, due in parts to the weaknesses that they're suffering from the inverse ninja law. And all the while, Beatrix is having her own conversation with Bill, and then her own confrontation with the final member of the Deadly Viper assassination squad. It is after this that the two of them begin a dramatic final confrontation that begins with Beatrix attempting to use her pistol and ends with Beatrix using one of the legendary martial arts skills that she learned, the 5 points exploding hearts technique, which is probably not the in-canon name of it, but that gives you enough of a visual of what it is. It's a technique where you hit 5 different pressure points all at once, and then you slam someone with your palm, and after they take 5 steps, their heart will explode. This is more or less what happens in the actual canon story as well. This is how it ends, and it is in the wake of this that Luciano reveals something that they have kept hidden from Beatrix. They reveal the nature of A Wish for Peace. For those of you who do not remember, A Wish for Peace was the ultimate perk that Luciano gained in A Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and it is probably the ultimate hero perk. It is a perk that makes it so that when you defeat or when you stop evildoers, some of their evil is undone. It is at this point as certain spirits are starting to fill the air, and Beatrix is looking around at the scene in amazement that she is realizing that something strange is occurring. Luciano shared this perk with her without her knowing, so that way when the time came and she dealt the final blow to Bill, she would be able to potentially reap a final reward. Luciano did not alert her to the powers of this perk in advance because they wanted to see how the perk would manifest in the final battle before doing so, and because doing so and potentially getting Beatrix's hopes up concerning something like the fate of her daughter or even the fate of her fiance, someone that she did care about, all of these things would start to get up in the air, and the thought of possibly getting those figures back, especially her fiance, who Luciano knew for sure was dead, Luciano didn't want any of that distracting Beatrix during the final battle. So Luciano re-enters the hacienda and has a conversation with her as a spirit is staying and waiting and listening to the conversation. In my head, how a wish for peace manifests is different and cinematic every time it manifests, and I think it's fitting that as a way to end this scenario, it manifests in a brilliant flash of light as the true reward for the scenario becomes clear. Luciano and Beatrix watch as Beatrix's fiance, one of the figures who was killed at the gun show, at the gun showdown at the rehearsal wedding that started this story off, is resurrected. And during this time, Beatrix begins to cry. She is amazed at the sheer supernatural power of Luciano. And as this is happening, Luciano smiles at Beatrix and her reunited fiance and reveals that what they have been doing is part of a scenario. They explain that there is a different timeline where this story does not have the same happy ending that it seems that it's going to have here. And during this time, Luciano explains all of the differences. They explain how Vernita Green's daughter sees Beatrix kill her mom. They explain how the Beatrix's fiance is not resurrected. They explain the horrifying events which happens at the start of the story when Beatrix wakes up. And they reveal just how different they have made the story. They also reveal that they have the ability to take Beatrix, BB, and Beatrix's fiance on their journey. And as they look at the reunited family and as they recall the sleeping daughter waiting and unknowingly about to begin a new journey, a new path forward in her life, they realize that bringing this family along is not the right call. This family has a life of their own here. They have a journey that they could begin. They have things that they could do. And Luciano decides to do one final kindness. They say that there is one more journey that all four of them, Luciano, Beatrix, BB, and Beatrix's fiance, need to go on together back into the United States, where Luciano will go and will purchase a record store that Beatrix will be able to work at. And when Luciano leaves, they say that they will give the store over to Beatrix. For those of you who don't know, this is actually an item in the bride's origin. It's one of the discounted items that you could get if you take the bride as your origin in this particular story. It is also a canon element of the plot. It was what Beatrix wanted to do as part of her normal life beyond the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad. And with that, the scenario comes to an end. Luciano is happy to have helped out Beatrix and Beatrix's family and is happy to have defeated the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad. For the next couple of years, because all of this will have taken at most a couple of months, Luciano is going to wander the world, defeating people, defeating assassins, destroying criminal organizations, and generally just being the ultimate good lad, doing what they can to make the world a better place. In their downtime, they'll frequently return to Japan and have drinks with Hattori Hanzo. They will relax and they will share war stories of a sort with the man, explaining that they are a jumper, making Hattori Hanzo one of a very rare handful of people who actually know about jumpers and understands somewhat the nature of the multiverse as it's been revealed to Luciano. And on their final day in this particular setting, they will actually go over to the record store, making use of some of their items to cross time and space, because Luciano actually does have an item that allows them to fast travel. It's just not been something that Luciano has hardly ever used. And they will give the store over to Beatrix, as well as have one final conversation with Beatrix, Beatrix's fiance, and a now roughly 15-year-old BB. And during this time, they will thank them for the adventure that they went on. They will be happy to see that their friends are happy. And also, shortly before they leave, they will go and check in on Vernita Green's daughter. They will see that the daughter is doing completely fine, having moved on, as well as you can move on from something like what happened to her, and is happy. She's well adjusted, she's been adopted, and while it's not a perfect ending, far from it, in fact, it's a pretty damn good one. So Luciano is ready and eager to go on their next adventure when everything comes to an end and they find themselves back in their personal reality, ready to go on their next jump. For those of you who don't remember something that I said at the very beginning of this is a refilm. I actually like this version of the story a lot better. I had significant audio issues, and in fact, I believe that there might have been like one, hopefully very minor, very temporary audio hiccup. I heard it when I was playing this back once, at least the parts of the video that have already been filmed. But as long as it's just one, I should be fine filming this and uploading it. That said, I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. I can't wait to talk to you all again. But bye, everyone.